Welcome back to Molecules Matter with Dr. Dan, the podcast where we explore the remarkable molecules that influence human health, one fascinating compound at a time. I'm Dr. Dan, a PhD organic chemist, and every episode we take a deep dive into the science behind molecules found in nature, foods, supplements, or even those being investigated in cutting-edge medical research. Today's molecule has become one of the most talked about peptides on social media. Athletes are using it, biohackers swear by it, clinics advertise it for injuries. You've probably heard claims that it can heal torn tendons, repair your gut, eliminate joint pain, and speed recovery from almost anything. That molecule is BPC-157. But what does the science actually say? What exactly is BPC-157? Where does it come from? Is it safe? And perhaps the biggest question of all, should you take it? Today, we'll separate excitement from evidence and discuss why, despite some intriguing research, I personally would not take BPC-157 based on the evidence currently available. Let's dive in. What is BPC-157? BPC-157 stands for Body Protection Compound 157. The name comes from the fact that it's a peptide consisting of 157 amino acids with a naturally occurring protective protein found in human gastric juice. Researchers identified a small 15 amino acid fragment that appeared to retain many of the biological activities of the larger protein. That synthetic fragment is what we now call BPC-157. So here's an important clarification. The peptide being sold today is not naturally extracted from your stomach. Instead, scientists chemically synthesize a peptide with the exact amino acid sequence of this naturally occurring fragment. In other words, its inspiration comes from a naturally occurring human protein, but the products sold today are laboratory-made. Researchers originally became interested in this peptide because the stomach has an incredible ability to protect and repair itself despite constant exposure to hydrochloric acid powerful enough to digest food. Scientists wondered whether some of the stomach's protective molecules could also promote healing elsewhere in the body. That question launched decades of animal research. So, why has BPC-157 become so popular? If you spent any time online, you've probably seen astonishing testimonials. My shoulder healed in 2 weeks. My knee pain disappeared. My gut problems vanished. My tendon regenerated. These stories have fueled enormous interest. However, it's important to distinguish between anecdotes and clinical evidence. Science asks a different question. Can these results be consistently demonstrated in carefully controlled human studies? That's where things become much more complicated. So let's talk about the potential health benefits of BPC-157. Potential benefit number 1, gastrointestinal protection. Ironically, this is where BPC-157 has some of its strongest scientific rationale, because it originated from gastric protective proteins. Because of that, researchers first studied its effect on the digestive tract. Numerous animal studies have shown accelerated healing of gastric ulcers, intestinal injuries, esophageal damage, chemical injuries to the digestive tract, and inflammatory bowel injury models. Researchers have proposed several possible mechanisms, that of increasing blood flow, reducing oxidative stress, reducing inflammatory signaling, supporting new blood vessel formation, improving tissue repair. And these findings are certainly intriguing. However, and this is a theme you'll hear repeatedly throughout today's episode, the overwhelming majority of these studies have been performed in rodents. Large, well-designed human clinical trials simply do not yet exist. Potential benefit number 2, knee pain and joint injuries. One of the biggest reasons people seek BPC-157 is chronic joint pain. Animal research has demonstrated accelerated healing of ligaments, tendons, meniscus injuries, and muscle injuries. Several laboratory studies suggest that BPC-157 may stimulate tendon fibroblasts, which are the cells responsible for maintaining and repairing connective tissue. Researchers have observed important tendon organization and stronger healing in animal injury models. But Here's an important distinction. Improved healing in rodents does not automatically translate into effective treatment for humans. Human orthopedic research remains extremely limited. At this point, we simply don't have enough high-quality clinical evidence to conclude that BPC-157 reliably reduces knee pain in people. Potential benefit number 3, ankle sprains, bruising, and soft tissue injuries. Social media has popularized BPC-157 as an injury recovery peptide. Animal studies have reported faster recovery after ligament injury, reduced swelling, improved tendon healing, accelerated muscle recovery, and reduced bruising. Some researchers believe improved blood vessel stability and enhanced tissue remodeling may explain these observations. Again, interesting science, but not enough human evidence. If you're wondering whether injecting BPC-157 after an ankle sprain is supported by strong clinical trials, the answer is no. Potential benefit number 4, bladder pain and interstitial cystitis. Interstitial cystitis, often called IC or painful bladder syndrome, can be incredibly difficult to treat. Animal studies suggest BPC-157 may protect the bladder tissue and reduce inflammation after injury. There are also limited early human observations suggesting potential benefit. However, these studies are generally small, uncontrolled, or preliminary. We simply don't have enough evidence to recommend BPC-157 as a treatment for interstitial cystitis. Patients should continue working with their physicians to pursue therapies supported by stronger clinical evidence. Potential benefit number 5, collagen production. Another common claim online is that BPC-157 dramatically increases collagen production. The science here is nuanced. Several laboratory studies suggest BPC-157 may increase activity of fibroblasts. Fibroblasts produce collagen and elastin and other components of connective tissue. Some experiments have shown increased expression of genes involved in collagen remodeling and tissue repair. But again, most of this work comes from laboratory cell studies or animal research. Whether this translates into clinically meaningful collagen production in humans remains uncertain. Potential benefit number 6, lowering inflammation. Inflammation appears throughout nearly every BPC-157 study. Researchers have observed reductions in several inflammatory signaling molecules in animal models. Possible mechanisms include reduced oxidative stress, improved nitric oxide regulation, reduced inflammatory cytokines, enhanced tissue repair, and rather than functioning as a classic anti-inflammatory drug, BPC-157 may create an environment more favorable for healing, at least in animals. Whether those same anti-inflammatory effects occur consistently in humans remains unknown. Potential benefit number 7, blood vessel health. One of the most fascinating areas of research involves angiogenesis, the formation of new blood vessels. Numerous studies suggest BPC-157 may influence blood vessel growth, microcirculation, endothelial function, blood flow to injured tissues, and researchers believe these vascular effects could partially explain improvements seen in tendon, muscle, and gastrointestinal healing. However, angiogenesis is a complicated biological process. Stimulating new blood vessel growth isn't always beneficial. It's an area requiring much more research before conclusions can be made. Let's talk about other areas being studied. Researchers have also investigated BPC-157 in animal models of brain injury, nerve regeneration, liver injury, heart injury, muscle healing, burns, skin wounds, and toxicity protection. Some findings have been quite impressive, but once again, most remain confined to preclinical research. So, why isn't BPC-157 FDA approved? This is one of the biggest questions people ask. The answer is straightforward. The FDA has not approved BPC-157 for the treatment of any medical condition. That doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't work. It means the evidence required for approval simply hasn't been established. Approval requires large human clinical trials, safety studies, dose-finding studies, manufacturing consistency, long-term follow-up, and a clear demonstration that benefits outweigh risks. And that data does not currently exist. Now let's talk about the gray area of the peptide industry. This brings us to one of the most important parts of today's episode. The peptide industry currently exists in a regulatory gray area. Many peptides sold online are labeled for research use only or not for human consumption. Yet, everyone understands many buyers intend to use them. Because these products are generally not FDA-approved medications, manufacturing standards can vary dramatically. Independent testing has repeatedly shown that some peptide products may contain too little active ingredient, too much active ingredient, incorrect peptides, degradation products, bacterial contamination, residual manufacturing chemicals, endotoxins, heavy metals, and other impurities. And sterility is also a major concern for injectable products. Even if the peptide sequence itself were perfectly safe, contamination during manufacturing could create entirely different health risks. Another concern is we often don't know what's actually in the vial. One major challenge with today's peptide marketplace is quality assurance. Many manufacturers are overseas. Some use pharmaceutical-grade facilities, others may not. Without strict regulatory oversight, consumers often have no reliable way to verify purity, identity, potency, sterility, and batch-to-batch consistency. And certificates of analysis can sometimes be forged or generated by laboratories or generated by AI that lack independent accreditation. And that creates uncertainty. And uncertainty is something scientists take very seriously. So what about long-term safety? This is another major limitation. We simply don't know. Most published studies evaluate relatively short-term outcomes. Questions remain about long-term immune effects, cancer risk, hormonal interactions, repeated dosing, effects in older adults, effects in children, effects during pregnancy, drug interactions. Until those questions are answered, caution is warranted. So let's talk about balancing the science. Here's how I personally look at BPC-157. The preclinical science is genuinely interesting. Some animal studies are remarkably promising. Researchers have uncovered biological mechanisms that deserve continued investigation. I sincerely hope additional clinical trials are performed because there may very well be legitimate therapeutic potential. But hope is not the same thing as evidence. As scientists, we have to resist the temptation to assume that exciting animal data automatically predict success in humans. History is filled with compounds that looked extraordinary in mice, but ultimately failed in clinical trials. So here's my personal opinion. People often ask me, Dr. Dan, would you take BPC-157? Based on the evidence available today, my answer is no. Not because I believe it's ineffective, not because I think the science is poor, but because I don't believe we currently have enough high-quality human clinical evidence demonstrating both efficacy and long-term safety. And equally important, I don't have confidence that every peptide being sold today is manufactured under consistently rigorous pharmaceutical quality conditions. For me personally, those uncertainties outweigh the potential benefits. As additional human trials emerge and manufacturing standards improve, that opinion can certainly change. Science evolves. Good scientists should be willing to change their conclusion when stronger evidence becomes available. But based on today's evidence, I would not. So here are my final thoughts. BPC-157 is one of the most fascinating peptides currently under investigation. Its origins in the stomach's own protective biology make it scientifically intriguing. Animal research suggests potential health benefits for digestive health, connective tissue repair, blood vessel function, inflammation, joint injuries, soft tissue healing, bladder protection, perhaps even collagen remodeling. Those findings deserve further investigation. But we're simply not yet at the point where strong human clinical evidence supports widespread use. As always, my goal isn't to tell you what to do. It's to help you understand the science so you can make informed decisions based on evidence rather than hype. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Molecules Matter with Dr. Dan. If you enjoyed today's episode, I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who's curious about the science behind peptides. Remember, every molecule tells a story. The more we understand those stories, the better equipped we are to make decisions that support our health. Until next time, stay curious and remember, molecules matter.